Assalamu alaikum everyone. In this video, I'm going to cover some very important points regarding your MS or MPhil degree. It's very important for you to know these rules because otherwise you can face very serious consequences. For example, recently a lot of students have been time barred because, for example, they did not know the rules with regard to the time limits to complete the degree. So I'll try to keep the video as short and to the point as possible, and you can also use the timestamps to skip around in the video. Okay, so the first point that I want to remind you is that you should begin with the end in mind. This is very important, and this is the first and most important rule that you should know, that as far as your MS or MPhil degree is concerned, you have to remember that you have to finish in 4 years. So, for example, if you started in 2021, then you have a total of 4 years to complete your degree, that is by 2024. So if, for example, you start in spring 21, then by the end of 2024 you should be done with your coursework as well as your thesis. Now at the end of this video, I'm going to share some tips with regard to how you can approach your thesis and whether you need to start thinking about your thesis topic at the start of your coursework or during your coursework or at the end of your coursework. So that is something we're going to discuss at the end of this video. For now, let's look at the situation where if you are from a non economics background, for example, if you're doing MS in economics and you don't have a prior degree in economics, then you will be required to complete some prerequisite courses. So the first part of this video is going to explain the situation which applies to a student who has to complete, let's say, 3 prerequisite courses. Okay, so for example, if let's say you registered in fall 2023 and this is your first semester and you are from a non-economics background pursuing an MS in economics, then in this situation you will have to complete 3 prerequisite courses. Usually there are 3, although this can vary from student to student, but generally there are 3 courses that you have to complete. So in this situation, this is a possible timeline for you. And of course, if you did not start in fall 2023 and instead you started in spring 2023, or if you are about to start in, let's say, spring 2024, then you can just change this timeline according to the time at which you start. But remember that this timeline is potential only, and I'm going to discuss other possible timelines for other types of situations. So, coming back to this situation, where you have to complete 3 prerequisite courses, then in this situation, ideally what you can do is, if possible for you, given your particular personal circumstances, then my advice to you would be to take the maximum course load, that is the 3 courses in the same first semester, and not delay it to future semesters. I'm going to explain later why I'm giving this advice and why it's going to be beneficial for you in the long run, even though it becomes difficult initially. So let's say that in fall 2023, you do take 3 courses and you're done with the 3 prerequisite courses. Now, in order to get your MS degree, you are required to complete a total of 8 courses. And remember that these 8 courses are in addition to the prerequisite courses. So, let's say that in spring 2024, which is the next semester, let's say you take 3 courses. And in summer, you have to remember that according to the HEC policy, you are not allowed to take any courses at all. So, in let's say fall 2024, you take another 3 courses. So, during the year of 2024, you would be done with 6 courses out of the total of 8 courses which you are required to complete. So you will be left with 2 courses. Now, at this point, you will be wondering whether you can actually enroll in your thesis or whether you can actually start working on your thesis or at least identify the topic. And this is something I'm going to come back to later on in the video. So for now, let's stick to the coursework completion only. So let's say that in spring 2025, you intend to complete your coursework by taking the remaining 2 courses. So by the end of spring 2025, you are done with your 8 courses. If let's say that in spring 25, you take the remaining 2 courses and pass them in the first attempt. So the idea is that even if you do have 1, 2, or even 3 prerequisite courses, but you can be done with your entire coursework, which is the 8 essential courses, including the electives, and you can be done with these 8 courses and your prerequisite courses in a span of about 2 years. Now, this is why I had initially advised that you should take the full course load and not drop any courses in between, and also avoid taking only one or two courses at a time, because what happens is that by the time you are done with your coursework, if you have taken less than the maximum course load, then what will happen is that you will have lesser time left to complete your thesis. And I will make another video where I will talk about all the potential and possible challenges that you can face when you start your thesis. So it's best to leave more time towards the end of your degree while you're doing your thesis, because you can potentially face so many challenges, and those challenges are relatively more challenging, I would say, as compared to the coursework. Even though while you are doing your coursework, it may feel that it's pretty challenging already, but trust me, the thesis itself is relatively much more of a challenge to complete, and usually it's better to have more time on your plate so that you don't stress out and don't become frustrated, because the process otherwise is usually very frustrating on its own, even if you don't have to face time limits. So, ideally, you should want to keep the stress at the lowest possible levels, and this can only happen when you know that at least you have enough time left. Okay, so that brings me to the second most important point which you should be aware of. So, the question is, at what point during your coursework are you allowed to enroll in the thesis? So you can enroll in the thesis officially when you are left with only one course. So, for example, if you follow plan A, as I just discussed, you cannot enroll in your thesis until the summer of 2025, because until the spring of 2025, you will still be doing your coursework even if you have taken the maximum possible course load. So, until the summer of 2025, you cannot enroll officially, at least officially, in the thesis. And there is a reason I'm emphasizing on the word officially right now, because I will tell you some tips as to how you can still get started on your thesis even before you officially get enrolled. Now, another point that you should notice is that I just said that you can enroll in the thesis in the summer of 2025, because currently, as per the current rules, because these rules tend to keep changing from time to time, so I cannot be sure of the future. But at the time of recording this video, the rule is that you can enroll in the thesis even during summers, because if you remember, I had mentioned earlier that you cannot enroll in any courses during summers. Okay, so you should keep these important points in mind. Now, let's move on to the second possible plan, that is, where you are in a situation where you are not required to take any prerequisite courses at all. So, in this situation, what you can do is that once again, I would suggest that you should take the maximum course load, and in this situation, you can actually be done with your entire coursework in a span of just 1.5 years. So, I was in this situation, for example, and I did actually do it, and I will be making another video on how you can cope with the maximum course load and also score well in every subject and pass every subject in the first attempt. But that is a topic for another video. But the point of mentioning my example is to let you know that it is definitely doable, so it's not something impossible. And I'm just trying to encourage you, because I remember that when I was doing the coursework, there were so many times when I thought of dropping one course or not taking the maximum course load. So at that time, I did not have anybody to encourage me or guide me. And right now, the purpose of this video is to encourage other people who are feeling lost, just like I was feeling lost at that point in time. So yes, in short, you can definitely take the maximum course load and still do well in all of your courses. So if, let's say, you don't have any prerequisite courses to complete, then in this situation, you can be done with your coursework in just 1.5 years. So let's say you start in fall 23, you take the maximum of 3 courses in fall 23 and then another 3 courses in spring 24. And remember that in summer 24, you cannot take any courses. So in fall 24, you take your last 2 courses. So by the end of fall 24, you should be done with your entire coursework, that is the total of 8 courses. So in spring 25, you are going to be eligible to register for the thesis, because remember that in fall 24 you are still left with 2 courses. Now remember that there is another rule that you have to be aware of, which is that you can enroll in the thesis along with your coursework as long as you're left with only one course. So, for example, you are in a situation where you're done with 7 courses and it's your last semester of coursework. So, let's say in that semester where you have only one and only one course left to be completed, then in that situation, you are allowed to enroll in the thesis along with that one last course. But remember that this is not allowed with 2 courses, and it should be your final semester. That is, you should be left with only one final course, and at that point in time, you will be allowed to simultaneously enroll in the thesis in that same semester. Now, obviously, one size cannot fit everybody, so there are other possible situations. And if you are in a situation where you cannot take the maximum course load, and for example, if you are not able to pass a course in the first attempt, then in those situations, let's say you may cover the coursework along with possible prerequisite courses in, let's say, about 2.5 to 3 years. So remember that that is going to cut down on the remaining time that you have left in order to complete your thesis, because remember that it does not matter whether you are required to take prerequisite courses or not. The important point to remember is that the 4-year time limit applies to everybody regardless of whether you have to complete prerequisite courses or not. And another important point related to this point is that even if you have taken a semester off in between, so for example, if you choose to freeze a semester in between due to any reason, any personal circumstances, then in that situation also the semester that you did not take any courses, where you did not even register, is still going to count towards the overall 4-year time limit. So the important take home message is that at the time when you start your degree, like I said, you should begin with the end in mind. It's always crucial to remember the specific semester in which you started, because your time starts counting from the time that you registered. So, for example, if you registered in fall 21 and you took that semester off, that is, you don't enroll in any courses and just choose to secure your admission and just freeze that semester, but that semester is still going to count, because the date of admission, that is the date that you register and enroll yourself for the first time, is the time from which your countdown begins. And this is very important because students tend to forget their date of admission, and then later on, it's very difficult to keep track of the time that you have left to complete your degree. Now, this video is already very long, so I will not record the entire thesis process in this video. But the main point that I would like to share in this particular video is that the thesis process itself can take up to 1 year at the minimum, and usually it takes more than that because of a variety of factors. So keep in mind that depending on the university where you're studying, so for example, the university where I am studying, that is the Institute of Business Management, there are only 4 board meetings held in a year, and once again, this keeps changing from time to time. The key point to remember is that the thesis process definitely will take up to 1 year at least after you have completed your coursework. So keep in mind that you have to save at least 1 year after the completion of your coursework just for the thesis, because of the fact that your university may be like mine, where BSRs are not held very frequently, and because of a variety of other factors as well, because this is not just the only factor. And honestly, the life of an MPhil student entirely depends on when the next BSR is going to be held. So it's very important for you to find out at the start of your degree how frequently your university conducts these board meetings. Because if, for example, you're part of a university where BSRs are not held regularly, for example, every month or every 2 months, then you are in a situation where you have to ensure that you do not miss the BSR deadlines. And of course, it's not just the BSR deadline itself, there's also an agenda deadline. Now, in case you are a student who cannot possibly take the maximum course load in every semester, you don't need to worry, because there are many ways in which you can still complete your degree on time, even if you're taking just 1 or 2 courses at a time and you are not able to complete your coursework in the minimum possible time. You can still work on your thesis side by side, and you might be wondering how it is possible to work on your thesis when you have not yet even completed your coursework, because like I said, you cannot officially enroll in the thesis until you are left with just one course. So I will share certain tips as to how you can start identifying topics, how you can work on your proposal, and how you can identify potential supervisors and go and meet them and also discuss potential topics. So in this way, if you have done the groundwork during your coursework, then obviously it is very much possible to complete your degree on time, even if you're not taking the maximum course load. So even if you're not taking the maximum number of courses, you do not need to worry as long as you remember the date of your registration, that is the year and the semester in which you started, and the fact that you have to complete in 4 years. And in addition to this, you have to remember some basic rules, such as, for example, if you freeze a semester, that still counts as part of the 4-year timeline. So in the next video, I will share the entire process that is involved in completing your thesis, including the agenda and BSR deadlines, which you should know about, because otherwise you might not be able to complete your degree on time. And again, like I said, there are serious consequences. So for example, if you become time barred, you will have to register all over again, and that is also dependent on whether your university has a readmission policy and whether or not you're able to clear the entry test again. And of course, it depends on the number of seats available, so it's not going to be easy and straightforward to start all over again. So keeping these points in mind, it's best to have a plan and a strategy such that you don't become time barred and you are able to complete your coursework as well as your thesis before the 4-year time limit is over. So in the next video, we're going to talk about how you can go about choosing a supervisor, how you can identify potential topics, how you can use your summers wisely during the time that you're not allowed to take any courses, so that if you work on your thesis proposal during your summers and identify potential supervisors during that time, because there are also certain points that you should keep in mind with regard to supervisor selection. And in addition, there's always a good time and a bad time to approach a potential supervisor. So in the next video, I'm going to share all about these tips. And there are certain qualities that you want to look for in a good supervisor. In fact, sometimes the do's are less important than the don'ts. So there are certain qualities that you don't want in a supervisor. So I'll share certain tips as to how you can go about looking for the best possible supervisor. Although again, there are certain rules. So for example, you can only choose a supervisor from your own university, although the co-supervisor can be from some other university. But then obviously that is also not as straightforward. Before I conclude this video, I would like to mention two important points that I forgot to mention during the video. The first point is that if you don't register yourself for 3 consecutive semesters, so let's say you're done with your coursework and you believe that you have all the time in the world to finish your thesis, so you decide to take a break for a year maybe. So let's say that you complete your coursework in fall 2023, and in spring 24 and summer 24 and fall 24, that is for 3 consecutive semesters, for the whole of 2024, you don't register yourself in any course. So even if you do decide to take time off and not work on your thesis, you should still remember that even if you're done with your entire coursework, you still have to get yourself registered and keep your enrollment active. Otherwise, your registration is going to be cancelled and you will lose your admission. So once again, you will have to reapply for admission and start the process all over again along with the coursework. So that was one point. Another point that I forgot to mention is that at the moment that you decide that you have to drop a course, or maybe you decide that you don't want to take 3 courses and instead you decide to take only 2 courses for any personal reason, just keep in mind that you should always visit the course coordinator or the relevant person in charge to ensure that the course which you are not taking in that semester is going to be offered in the next semester. Once again, the rules are different from university to university, and of course, the rules keep changing from time to time. But this is something that I have personally faced. So always keep in mind that you cannot presume that every course will be offered in every semester. So think carefully before you drop a course, because you have to inquire and ensure before you drop a course that it will be offered either in the next semester or the semester after it, because this can also lead to potential delays. So you should always find out before dropping a course, especially if it's a core course and not just an elective, whether or not it will be offered in the future semesters. Okay, so that's it for this video. I hope you find the video useful. I believe I have covered almost all of the important points. And if you have any questions or comments, you should feel free to comment in the comment box below. Thank you so much for listening.